Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Budapest here in Central Europe. I hope everybody is having a fantastic week thus far and looking forward to a great weekend here. Hi Tanya, nice to see you. This is a members chat class. Welcome members. Everybody's welcome to watch. There will be lots of learning for the IELTS exam. Specifically, we are looking at a reading section, and we're looking at strategies on the best way to answer questions to get that nearly perfect or perfect score, band 9. Band 9 means that you get either 39 or 40 of the questions correct from the total 40 in the reading section. Hi Carolina. Again, this lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com. The material that we will be using today is from our website, from our exam books. This is one of our newer exam books we're developing for this year. And for General IELTS, check us out at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. On both of our websites, we have lots and lots of exams, reading passages, audio for reading sections, as well as many video lessons, interactive courses for you to improve. This is our academic website here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join the premium package, and you can use the code R4TYJ to get a 20% discount. I'm giving you that code today to encourage you to take advantage of our materials and join the many, many students who succeed on IELTS after they use these materials on a daily basis. This is our General IELTS website here with the green background. You can click that big red button to join us there. There you will, of course, find General IELTS reading materials and passages. It's important to note, everyone, members, viewers, that Section 3 in your General IELTS reading is very, very, very similar to your academic IELTS reading passages. So whatever you learn in today's class, certainly you can use it for your General IELTS reading Section 3 especially as well. But of course, improving your reading fluency and comprehension will just be a skill that you want to master in any case. So, a little bit more on our helpful content. We have apps, Academic IELTS Help app. The app links to the website, aehelp.com. General IELTS Help app will link to gieltshelp.com so that you can learn from your PC or from your mobile phone anywhere, anytime. We are building the most advanced IELTS learning system in the world. And if you have any questions, just send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. Devansh, nice to see you in the class. Amrita, good to see you as well. Abhishek, nice to see you in here. Nice to see everybody joining in. So right now, reading in 90 minutes, we will have another class that will focus on listening, parts 1 and 2 practice and strategy. And so let's get into it. This is today's reading passage, starting with a list of headings. So list of headings question, probably the second most popular kind of question for IELTS students to ask about after the true, false, not given. So most students kind of ask about true, false, not given. Firstly, they like, oh, what do you do? How do I do it? Then they ask about list of headings and then multiple choice. That's kind of the rank order of difficulty for many students. But not to worry, a list of headings, true, false, not given, multiple choice, they're not that bad as long as you know what you are doing. Okay, so here we're going to have a number of paragraphs to this passage. And before you read the list of headings, read the title, okay? So the title is a concise summary of the entire passage. And then the list of headings will be more specific, concise summaries of each paragraph. Okay, it's really important to keep that in mind. So let's read this title first of all. And then let me try to maximize our print size here so that we can really see it even on smaller mobile devices. That was that. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right. So here's the title of this passage: A Territorial Dispute Between Friends, Canada and the United States. All right, so here we have the title. As soon as you read the title, you want to start brainstorming and thinking about the contents of this passage. So what could it be about? What do you think, members? What might be the content of this passage? So a territorial dispute between friends, Canada and the United States. So what is the topic here of this? Okay, whenever you read the title, you want to think about the content. So let's do that now, okay? So what is the content? You can infer much of the passage and its structure from the title. So based on this one here, example, what is this passage about? I'm just going to call it Canada, U.S. How did they use that word? Territorial dispute. Okay. So what is this passage about Canada-U.S. territorial dispute? Okay. Pippi says it's some kind of political dispute. Yeah, but Pippi, that doesn't give us a lot more information. Try to be a little bit more concise. Oh, it says there's conflict between Canada and USA about land. Okay, good. That's good, okay? A territory is land. So, of course, that's going to help you to know the meaning of that word. So, an argument about land rights or ownership between these two countries. Okay, so an argument about land rights or ownership between these two countries. How many of you got this information from this part of the title? Okay. So that's what you should be thinking about. Okay? So how many of you got that? Anybody kind of think about it at that level? So it's an argument about rights to ownership of land between these two countries. Okay? And then Tanya says, well, let's think about how it starts. So Tanya, instead of thinking about the question, like how it starts, think about a statement. Okay, so students, remember this tip. Okay, it's always better to infer with statements than with questions. Okay, it just gives you more clarity. So Tanya, you're definitely on the right idea, how it starts, why, how it is solved. But instead of thinking about questions, can you change those questions into statements? And this is for everybody. So Carolina says, yeah, I got that. Good. Abhishek says yes. All right, so change it into statements. Statements. Okay. We don't have Russia in here yet, Ois, so we can't assume that. All right. Change the how it starts. Okay. All right. So when I think of how it starts, I would write something like the history of this dispute, its origin. Okay. So see, it's not a question, it's a statement. Okay, so think statements, not questions at this point. This isn't like planning your task 2. This is a finished essay. An IELTS professional has written it, so you're inferring the information. You're not asking questions so much here as you're answering them. Okay, everybody clear on that? So statements, okay, statements. So when you think of a statement, the reason why it's good to do that is because you can take it one step further. Okay? So Tanya says the reason of this dispute. Yeah, much better, Tanya. So the history of this dispute, its origin. Okay? What do you think that is? So if you had to guess, if I said, hey, I'll give you $1 million if you can guess the origin of this dispute, what would you guess? So when did this happen? Okay? Let's say I'm motivating you here. Let's say it's for $1 million, right? Hypothetically speaking. So then what would you say? What is the origin of this dispute? So where do you think it would originate from? Now, I know that many of you don't have historical knowledge of Canada, United States, but you might be able to guess it through some logical and critical thinking. So where could this kind of dispute come from, its origin? And it's basically where all land disputes come from if you think about it in a logical way. So where does it come from? Where would such a dispute come from? So Tanya says maybe after a war, okay. That's not bad, Tanya. It's not exactly right in this case, but it's a good inference, perhaps after a war. Okay, yeah, it's not a bad way to think about it. Abhishek says maybe from the 19th century. Carolina, very good, says maybe from colonization, where there weren't borders yet. Yeah, so obviously, relatively speaking, both Canada and the USA are young countries. So they were colonized and the borders were created in fairly recent history. Yeah, so during British French colonization. Okay, another one that comes to mind for me is difficult geographic features. For example, river, ocean, mountain. Okay, that's often a very tricky one. I'm sure, as many of you know, and I'm sure many of you are thinking of other parts of the world where this becomes a problem, where we're trying to divide the country according to a certain border. But of course, rivers, oceans, mountains, lakes make that a little bit difficult. How do you know if somebody's in your country when you have a big ocean or a lake in kind of the way of the border, right? So that would be another one that would come to mind, okay? And so this is why you want to think about the idea, and then you want to take it one step further. And when you do this regularly, thinking about the title and the information and the questions, you can get very quick at it. Okay, Oa says long border between the two countries. Okay, so that's another good idea as well. Okay, so long borders. All right, good. Okay, so this is the history of the dispute. The outcome of the dispute. Okay, so when I think about the outcome of this dispute, I think about, well, maybe a decision has been made or a treaty or an agreement has been signed by the two countries. Maybe there's still conflict, right? One part of the world that comes to mind for me is the Gaza Strip, where there's constant dispute over ownership, right? PP says the consequences of the dispute. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so those are the ideas that come to mind. Good. All right. So before I go into the passage here, just again, I really want to emphasize this. So when you're inferring, okay, Keep this in mind. Can I get a few thumbs up just so that I'm sure that this point is very clear for all of you and it's going to stick in your minds? When you're inferring, don't just think about questions like what is it about, where is it happening, who is it happening with, but actually think about statements. It's okay to start with the question, but think about the statements instead of the questions, because that's when you're truly inferring. That's an inference. An inference is a statement based on educated questions and thinking. Okay. Carolina says thumbs up. Good. Okay. All right. So keep that in mind. Okay. Don't get lost in questions, but drive your thinking towards statements. All right. Pipi, Devansh, Abhishek. Is that clear? Tanya? Yeah, it's clear for the future. You want to drive thinking. Just a second, I'll get you back on screen here. I saw that the camera took a snooze there. All right. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, keep that in mind as you're doing the inferences. Inferences can definitely help you to drive to higher band scores in the reading section. Okay. All right. Crystallite, there you are. Welcome back. Okay. Thanks, Ois. Yeah, she's doing well. Okay. All right, so let's get into this. So now that we've read the title, we go back to the questions, okay? And list of headings is interesting. So list of headings question is the one question that can contain some unnecessary information, okay, because not all of these are correct, okay? List of headings means that you have to figure out which one of these statements is the title or the subtitle for a specific paragraph. So it will give you some kind of an example. I have my answer key here included, so I don't want to show you that, or I'll show you that as little bit as possible. But basically, this passage has paragraphs A to F, okay? So it has 6 paragraphs, and you have to figure out which title is correct for each one. Now, there's 6 paragraphs, and there's actually 10 choices. So that means that 4 of these are not going to be correct. And usually in the IELTS, you never read questions that have false or extra information, except for list of headings. Does anybody know why that is? So why is it that we should read list of headings questions even though they include extra information? No, Amrita, it's not really a difficult part of reading. In fact, I think list of headings is one of the easier questions when you know what you're doing. Okay. Abhishek says, what if we have a problem in the title itself? Abhishek, if the title is difficult, don't worry about it. Then go to the questions and see if you can infer information from there. Okay. So compare the title to the questions, and especially list of headings. Abhishek will help you with that. Okay. Amrita says, sometimes I have no ideas. Tanya says it makes confusion. But again, so my question here is, so you should not read. So here's my tip here for list of headings, okay? So you should not read questions that contain false and extra information, like true, false, not given, except for list of headings. Okay, so my question to you is why? Why is it then okay for this one question type? Why is it okay to read this one question type? Ois says, because we're only reading the main ideas. Yeah, partly, Ois, you're correct. Because here you are only focusing on the potential title of each paragraph. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's one reason. There is another reason. Okay, so this is reason one. And for those of you that have studied list of headings strategies with me, you should be able to identify the second reason. Okay, there's another kind of unique strategy with list of headings. Yeah, very good, Abhishek. Fantastic. Boom, Abhishek. There's your big thumbs up. Yeah. For doves, no, not all the information's true necessarily. There can definitely be information that's not true. But Abhishek has the right answer. So Abhishek says, because it's the only question that we should answer while reading. Yes. Absolutely. Okay, so any other question type that's not list of headings, you should only answer after you've finished reading. List of headings, you should answer while you're reading. So it's a good idea to review all of your choices before you read. Very good, Abhishek. So these are the two reasons why list of headings is an exception to this rule of not reading it before the passage. Okay? All right, great, fantastic. Is that clear? Is everybody clear on why it's a good idea to read the list of headings questions before you read the passage? And hey, by the way, it's not just me telling you. It's not like, oh, Adrian's inventing his own magical strategies for IELTS. This is the way it is, and my proof, okay? The proof to this logic is that the IELTS test makers give you this question type before the passage. And it is the only one given before the passage. Okay, everybody's realized that, I'm sure, right? Every other question type comes after the passage, and this is the only one that the IELTS examiners give you before the passage. That's because they are indirectly suggesting to you, do this question. Read it before the passage and do it while you read. All of the other questions, do it after you finished reading. Okay? That message is in the structure of the exam. Do you agree with me or disagree with me on that? So do you agree that the most likely reason the IELTS examiners put the list of headings questions before the passage is because they want to suggest to you, the examiner, to read it before the passage and perhaps even do it while you're reading? Would you agree that that's the logic of the exam maker as opposed to just Adrian's cockamamie idea in these live classes? Hopefully, because that structurally makes sense, right? Okay. All right, because students tend to forget that. Okay, that's why I'm emphasizing. I know a lot of you are really clever and you figured that out, but I definitely want to emphasize that. Okay. All right. So here's our list of headings. And when we're looking at the list of headings, at home, we always want to paraphrase them on the paper so that we can think about it in different ways, because often we will see the information with different words in the paragraph. In the real exam, you don't have that much time, so you just paraphrase in your mind. Okay? All right. Thanks for agreeing, Abhishek, Natalie, Hoas. All right. So here, at home, I would write it on the paper. An agreement of St. Petersburg between Russia and the US. Okay. Now I can see that this is the Treaty of St. Petersburg. So this is a name. So this is likely going to stay the same. I know it's a name because of the capital T. Okay, but I'm still doing a bit of paraphrasing here. Okay. Fishing and mining for gold in the Alaska Panhandle. Okay. Here, I'm just going to paraphrase fishing and mining as industry. in Alaska. I'm not sure what panhandle is yet, but I'll definitely figure that out. And I keep going this way. So the dispute is adjudicated. So the conflict is judged. Okay, the treaty draws ambiguous lines. So the agreement creates unclear lines, an uncertain future for the region's sovereignty. And I do as much of it as possible. If I don't know the word sovereignty in English or in French, then I just leave it, okay? So whatever words I'm not clear on, I don't worry about them at this point, okay? And I paraphrase the words I can and think about them in different ways, okay? So that's all I do. Okay, and then before I start reading, I quickly look to see if there are any other questions in this passage that can help me. Okay, so I go to the end of the passage, and then here I have this kind of a question. Match the following people or peoples with facts about them from the passage. So I'm matching peoples with some kind of facts, okay? Now, here, these are all going to be in the passage. So all of these types of people will be in the passage, and all of these choices will be here too, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 different groups of people, and 1, 2, 3, 4 different facts or points. Okay, so this is matching information. This matching information is all in the passage. So I know that there will be some information about salmon fishers. There will be some information about indigenous peoples, Russian explorers, international tribunal participants. Okay. Had various interests with respect to the Alaska boundary dispute. Until recent lacked a voice in sovereignty discussions. The first inhabitants of the land in question, made up of multiple nationalities in the region, including indigenous people. Okay, fine. So some useful information for me there. Now here, I have to complete each sentence with the correct ending. I have these sentences or half sentences, and then I have these endings. Okay, I have 6 choices, and I have 3 half sentences, which tells me that half of my choices are wrong, maybe not in the text, or maybe wrong information. So I don't worry about my choices. I just worry about this information here because I know that this information is in the passage. Okay, so I read those statements. So Novo-Arkhanghelsk was a Russian settlement located. The battle between the Russians and British, okay. The Alaska Purchase resulted, among other effects, something. Okay, fine. Now, when students get to this part in their reading in the academic IELTS, some students really start to kind of freak out and get really stressed out because they're thinking, there's so many words that I don't know here. There's a lot of new information. I'm not familiar with Alaska, with Russia, with Canada, US regional disputes. That's okay. Don't panic. You don't need to know all of this information at this point. The passage will have this information, okay? Remember, especially for the academic IELTS and for Section 3 in the general IELTS, the goal of the exam is to test how well you can learn information in English. So not just translate information, but learn information. Is everybody clear on this important difference, especially in the academic IELTS? So the exam is not just testing whether you can translate or interpret into your own language or ideas the information that's there from your existing knowledge, but the ability to learn new information using the English language. That's also what you're being tested on, especially with Passage 2 and Passage 3. Okay? Paraphrasing is a very important ability. The reason I'm telling you that is because if at this point you're a little bit stressed and you're thinking, I don't know anything yet, and this is going to be really difficult, don't do that. Just stay calm, okay? It's not as bad as you think. This isn't like first or second year university geography class, okay? That will be more challenging, all right? Here, the information should be fairly clear once you start reading, okay? All right. So if it's not clear yet, it's okay. All right. So let's get into some reading. And then we will do these together, and I'm going to show you the strategy for this. And you will do just fine, I promise you. Okay. All right. So this is a reading class. We're reading together. All right. We're reading together. And here we go, everyone, from the top. So read with me. Visualize the information. So put pictures to this. Gold, salmon. I definitely see a big chunk of gold or a gold ring on my hand. Salmon, I see a nice salmon, barbecued salmon in front of me. Okay, so what do gold and salmon have in common? Believe it or not, they're both the causes of an international boundary dispute that has been simmering for over 100 years and has involved Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia. The story of the Alaska boundary dispute begins with the Russian exploration and colonization of the region from the 1780s until 1867. The Russians had set up settlements such as Novoarkhanghelsk, 1799, along the panhandle of Russian America, the long and thin southernmost area of the region, which bordered British territory at the time and borders Canadian territory today. During the 17th century, Russian explorers, fishermen, whalers, and traders populated the area as it was rich in both salmon and sea otters, the latter of which was an incredibly valuable resource in the European fur trade of the time. The presence of British and American explorers also increased during this time. The Americans had an interest in extending their influence from California northward along the Pacific coast, and the British had an interest in pushing back what they felt was Russian incursion on British lands. Perhaps worst of all, the indigenous Haida and Tlingit peoples were caught in the middle of the burgeoning conflict. Their traditional and ancestral lands would be fought over for over 200 years with little regard for their sovereignty. Okay, so now to solve the list of headings question, we want to ask ourselves, what is this paragraph about? What is the goal of this paragraph? Okay, so to solve list of headings, first, and this is very important that it's first, okay? So to solve list of headings questions, read the paragraph and first ask and answer what is this paragraph about? Okay, so for example, this introduction. What is this paragraph about? So Otis says the background to the dispute in Alaska. Now remember, Otis, when I was doing my inferencing from the title, I said the history of the conflict, right? So okay, so that's what I would say. The history of the conflict. So there's different reasons, okay? And I think, Tanya, you said the reasons, right? So PP says the reasons for the conflict. I'm being a little bit more specific here. So land in Alaska. So the history of the conflict between nations. It does tell me, from this time to this time, okay? Carolina says hundreds of years of disputes over Alaskan land involving different groups of people. That would be another way to say it. Okay, so there's more answers to this than one. What's important is that we have kind of a similar or same idea. And now what we want to do is we want to figure out which one of these is the closest match to what we're saying, okay? So the Treaty of St. Petersburg, I didn't see or read that mentioned or visualize it. Fishing and mining for gold in the Alaska Panhandle, that was a part of it, but I definitely think this is just a part. So this is the way my logic's working, not a match. Partial match. Okay. Indigenous rights in the Salmon Treaty, no match. So I'm just going to write no for now. The dispute is adjudicated, no. Wasn't. A treaty draws ambiguous lines, no. An uncertain future for the region's sovereignty, no. I didn't see that. An unheard voice in the battle for sovereignty, partial match. Bonus question, what's the partial match here? An unheard voice in the battle for sovereignty. What was the partial match in this case? Okay, so let's see how many of you are really paying attention and actively reading here. What was the partial match for unheard voice in the battle for sovereignty? Who is the unheard voice? Very good, Carolina. You get my second thumbs up for the day. The indigenous people, right? That was the very last part. There's no way I should forget that. It said, and the people who are least heard or who are least paid attention to, the original people that lived there, the Haida and the Tlingit, something like that. So the indigenous people, it was the partial match, right? Very good, PP. Very nice. So that was a partial match. Haida Gwaii and Prince of Wales Island, no, don't remember reading about that. Overlapping fishing claims, partial match. Well, no, it wasn't, kind of a partial match, or partial or no is what I would go with there. And then a territory desired by many nations. Okay, clear match. Okay, so that was a complete match. It definitely, that paragraph, throughout the paragraph said Russian people were there for fishing and fur. American people were moving up the west coast and wanted more land. British people in what's now Canada felt that these other nations were imposing. So the closest match, or the clear match, is X. Okay, so for this first question, 14, which would be A, you would put X in your answer sheet, and then you would get that correct. Okay, so X is the right answer. Okay, because that is the clear match. And this is the closest match, a territory desired by many nations. It's the closest match to my summary. So the history of the conflict between nations in regards to ownership of the Alaskan land. And notice that the conflict between nations, in my answer here, is the closest match for 10. Does everybody see that close match between my answer and 10? It's definitely the closest match. Okay, it's clearly the closest match. All right? I have a little bit of more information in there, but clearly the closest match. Okay? And just so you know, everyone, this passage is pretty much as new to me as it is to you, because this passage for our company is still in development. So I don't have these answers memorized, just like you. I think we've done this passage once a couple months ago, and I'm sure that some of you remember a little bit who have been members for a while, but it's quite new for most everybody. Okay, let's go back to paragraph B and keep going in the same way. So we're going to read it, visualize it, and then we're going to discuss what the paragraph is about and what the best heading is. Okay, so here we go. From the top, 1825's Treaty of St. Petersburg between the British and Russians set the boundary between Russian America, modern Alaska, USA, and British North America, modern Yukon Territory, and British Columbia, Canada. But unfortunately, the agreement did not firmly set the boundary in the Panhandle region. This ambiguity did not matter for decades. In fact, following the American purchase of Russian America in 1867, known as the Alaska Purchase, the Canadian government wanted to clarify the Alaska-British Columbia border. The American government rejected the proposal because it did not matter to them enough to warrant the cost of such a survey. This all changed when gold was discovered in the nearby Yukon Territory, belonging to Canada, in 1897. Okay, so in this case, what do you think this paragraph is about? So in your own words, what is this paragraph about? Okay, Ois says it's a border crisis. Why, Ois? Why is it a border crisis? What lends you to believe that it's a border crisis? Okay, Abhishek says it's the Treaty of St. Petersburg. Definitely it starts with that, Abhishek. I'm not sure if it's... Okay, Tito says it's problems related to the treaty. What's the problem? Because it's definitely talking about that problem. Okay, Natalie, very good. So Natalie says it's the ambiguity of borders. Okay, so EXB would be that would be my answer. Okay, so ambiguity of borders following a treaty and purchase. So the reason why that's important, and I think all of you got this, is that at the beginning it starts with the Treaty of St. Petersburg, right? But then later on it says, in fact, following the American purchase of Russian America in 1867, known as the Alaska Purchase, the Canadian government wanted to clarify the Alaska-British Columbia border, okay? But the American government said, it's too much money, we don't want to survey it. So the Russians sold that chunk of land to the Americans, okay? So that's after this treaty. So there's a treaty here, but there's also a sale in place here. Did everybody see that? So did everybody get this information that there's a treaty and a purchase in this paragraph? And there's definitely this lack of clarity. So neither the treaty nor the purchase clarified the borders. Hopefully you picked that up. If you didn't, it could lead to a bit of trouble, but let's take a look at our options, okay? All right. So the Treaty of St. Petersburg between Russia and America, okay? Could that be correct? The first one? Is that correct? Fishing and mining for gold in the Alaska Panhandle, indigenous rights. Okay, hopefully you don't need to read through all of these to realize that they're not correct. The dispute is adjudicated. The treaty draws ambiguous lines. Okay, Tito says it's 5. First one's not correct. Okay, so no, why not? Okay, and you're saying 5 is correct. A treaty draws ambiguous lines. That's the Treaty of St. Petersburg. Why is this treaty not correct? Okay, why is this first one not correct? So what's the reason for that? Let's go back here. Yeah, very good. Yeah. Yeah. Abhishek. No, it's Ois. Yeah. So Ois says, because the treaty is between the British and the Russians, not the American and the Russians. So it's false information. Be careful about that, okay? So you will have that little kind of nuance in there. So this is not a bad answer. It's a little bit partial. This is a better answer for sure. But also there is incorrect information here between Russia and Britain. So if you catch that, you will realize if you're thinking, it could be this or it could be that, okay? Look for false or awkward information, all right? That's another tip, and I haven't really digressed into this one yet, okay? So, but keep this in mind, okay? So this is a tip, okay? If two questions or two answers in list of headings seems correct, check to see if one contains false or awkward information. Okay, everybody pick that up? Because oftentimes that's kind of the trick in the IELTS, is that when you look really carefully at the two, there'll be a little kind of nuance, some little tidbit or detail that's kind of like, wait a second, that's not exactly right. Like instead of saying the Empire of Rome, it'll say the city of Rome, okay? So be really careful, because sometimes one of them looks like a right answer, but there's just a slight kind of trick or twist in there to throw you off, okay? Everybody pick that up? So if two answers on the list of headings seems correct, check to see if one contains false or awkward information, okay? So it is never the correct answer if it is partial information or if it is false information. So if it says between the British and the Russians, and in the choices it says American and the Russians, it's not going to be the right one, okay? So you definitely have to choose the one that is the closest to your answer. Okay, so yeah, in this one for question 15 on your question sheet, for paragraph B, you would put in the Roman numeral V and you would get that correct, okay? All right. All right, let's do one more. Here we go. One more. Paragraph C. Here we go. Okay. All right. The Klondike Gold Rush transformed a simmering dispute into an inferno. Canada wanted a direct route through Canadian territory to the Pacific Ocean to get their gold onto ships and transport it to market. The United States, meanwhile, wanted to keep control of the coastal territory. The two sides could not come up with an agreement, and therefore the dispute went to an international tribunal in 1903, a kind of court where a supposedly unbiased group of people would decide the issue. The jury was made up of 6 men, no women, 3 Americans, 2 Canadians, and 1 Briton. Indigenous voices were not heard. The Americans were all politicians, while the Canadians were nonpartisan jurists, lawyers, and scholars, and the Briton was Lord Alverston, Lord Chief Justice of England. The Americans and Canadian representatives favored their own government's claims, so it was up to Lord Alverston. To the Canadian public's disbelief, Lord Alverston decided in favor of the American claim. Canada was a British dominion at the time, a partially independent nation with very strong ties to Britain, and Canadians felt betrayed by their colonial government. Canada had lost the dispute, but refused to sign the resulting document. Though the decision became international law, Canadians did not endorse it, and the dispute over the region continues to this day. When everybody thought all was buddy, buddy, pal, pal between Canada and the U.S. Yeah, so what is this paragraph about in your own words? What is this paragraph about? Okay? In your own words, what is this paragraph about? So it is about, you should have a very clear answer here. So Honey says a dispute between America and Canada. Ferdov says a continuing problem. Yeah, there's, I think, more specific information here, so do not overgeneralize. Injustice for the Canadians, says Chrysolite. Well, the Americans would disagree, Chrysolite. So not quite. Okay. Clash between Canada and Britain, Tito. Notice how you're all coming up with different answers, which is not good. Okay, PP says the judgment made by the court. So this is what I would say. It's about an international tribunal or an international court decision that has led to disagreement. Okay? Would you agree with my summary? Would you agree that this is about an international court's decision that has led to disagreement between Canadians, Americans, and Brits? Okay, that would be the more detailed. Okay. Tanya says one party to the conflict was unheard, so conflict will continue. Partially, Tanya, but I mean, it really does in detail discuss this actual tribunal of what was being discussed, why, when it was held, who was there. Okay, so we know a lot about this specific information here. Okay, who was there, what was discussed, what the decision was. So it's quite specific here. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look if anything matches to my summary of this. Okay. So it's about an international court's decision that kind of led to disagreement. Which one of these do you think is the best match? Okay. And I'm not going to help you with this one. You decide. So an international court decision that leads to continued conflict. What's the closest match? An international court's decision. Very good, Ferdovs. Very good, PP. Yeah, it's a dispute is adjudicated. Means adjudicated. Now, if some of you are going, well, yeah, but Adrian, I didn't know the word adjudicated. Okay, this word here. If you don't know a word like adjudicated, it could or could not be a correct answer, but you probably will know words that are similar to this. What word is in this word? What word kind of sounds the same? Okay. And here I'm helping you to strategize and figure out. So here's a tip on how to figure out unknown words. Adjourned. So Pippi says adjourned comes to mind. Okay, that's one word that comes to mind for me. Decision is definitely, if I know the word decision and adjudicated, then yes, but there's a couple other words that kind of almost sound like a part of it. Okay, you can break the word, right? So, okay, this is your prefix. This is your root, and this is your suffix. Okay? So to figure out the meaning of a word, look at the root. Okay? Judicate. Okay, so Natalie says the word jury comes to mind. The word justice. Okay, the word judge. All right. Very good, Tanya. Absolutely. So when a word is unclear, don't panic, don't freak out. Figure out the root. Usually you can know that. You should be familiar with your prefixes. Make sure that you learn lots of prefixes in the English language. That will always help you. Even native speakers will pay close attention to that because there's so many words in the English language. And then you will look at the root, and then judicate will know from these words what it means. Okay, Carolina, I see justice. Yeah. Is that clear? Okay, oh, it says judgment. Yeah. Judge or judgment. Judgment would be, of course, a different noun form, right? So everybody's clear on that? How you come to that decision? Okay, everyone, unfortunately, we're running out of time, or fortunately, so I will leave the rest of this reading passage to you. Here's paragraph D. You can go back and watch this video later on the channel, okay? So watch and repeat the same steps for the list of headings that we discussed. Here's paragraph D, okay? It's clear. You should be able to read it. Here's paragraph E. I'll leave that up for a moment, so when you look at the end of the video, you can clearly read that. And here's paragraph F, okay? And here are the list of headings one more time. So that's what you're choosing from, okay? And this is for our members or our premium course clients only. You can send your answers to my email, and I will send you back the answer key for this reading passage. So my email again is adrian@aehelp.com. So members and premium course members on our websites, go ahead. You can send me what you think is the correct list of headings for the rest of this passage, and I'll give you the answer key for it, okay? All right, Abhishek, you're very, very welcome. Tanya, you're welcome as well. Good participation from everyone in the class. And I will be back in about 30 minutes with listening section practice for part 1 and part 2, and everybody will be able to join there and give their answers and learn some strategies. That's it for now. Hopefully I'll see you in half an hour. I'm Adrian signing out from Budapest. Bye.